Mute buttons. We're on. We're live. Inspiration Nation. Hello. Lee Kemp here. Jose sadly is not with us this week. I don't even know why actually. Grifter. He just kind of said, "I can't." Oh, it was probably not. I think was the words I got back from him when I said, "Are we podding?" So no idea where you are, Jose, but we still love you, whatever you're up to. Probably winning a tennis tournament somewhere or other such things. But I am here with Ryan Boniface. How are you, my friend?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good, and I'm glad to hear that. Right, I hear as well. After my half-assed attempt at some sort of winging it, thrown in a quote thing last week, you are up to the plate. So, what have we got to talk about this week for some inspiration?
I have a quote from a man called Max Dupree. Do you know who Max Dupree is?
I might do.
Max Dupree was CEO of the Herman Miller office furniture company.
In which case, I don't. I'll tell you something else in a minute about who I thought it was. But carry on.
Sounds like it's going to be a wrestler name, I think.
One
Um,
hundred
his
percent.
his dad founded the Herman Miller office furniture company some years and years and years ago. Um, Always good to talk about your posture and office equipment and sitting up properly, things like
Hold on, I'm just
that.
going to adjust myself in my chair.
Yeah. My quote today, and I don't know if it originates with him or if it's just something he's famous for saying or just something that he's known for or whatever, is um, we cannot come we cannot become what we want by remaining what we are. Um, in the last few weeks and maybe actually the last few months, I think a lot of our topics between the three of us have tended to kind of overlap and talk about similar types of stories and positions and other things along those lines. And I don't think this strays too far away from that. I think they do end up being quite good conversations. And for me, the quote kind of emphasizes the need for growth and transformation, and kind of if you really want to improve yourself and change the scenario around you, or the positions that you find yourself in, that you've really got to put the effort in and change, not change who you are, but sometimes changing who you are and how you react to things and how you kind of take information in or feedback or anything along those lines really. um any thoughts, any thoughts?
Yeah, and I agree with you on it. It is important to change. None of us at any stage are ever our best versions of ourselves or our finished article. There's always room to improve and do things different and build upon what we are, and that's just a universal thing for everyone. So yeah, it's being prepared to change. I think is key, and it shouldn't just be I'm ready to change. The aim should be to get to a place where that's just a constant mindset and you're always open to learning and changing and developing. And you hear so many times people kind of fall into the trap and say, well, that's just what I do. That's just how I act. That's just how I am. That's just what I do. Or, oh, I don't know that. I couldn't learn that. I'm not good at X. I couldn't do X. All even I've tried X before and wasn't going to work out, so I'm not going to try it again. All these things become statements that become beliefs that kind of put
Yeah.
a lid on you and limit what you are and what you can do. And it's sometimes as people we can be our own worst enemies by putting those limiters in place. Which I think all comes back to this quote is that it's if if you want to achieve something you're not currently achieving, or there's somewhere you want to be, or something you want to build, or whatever it is, whatever your goal is, chances are there's some development along the way to get there. Otherwise, you'd probably be doing that thing already. And by saying I can't do this, I can't learn this, that's not who I am, etc., etc., you end up limiting yourself from getting there without even realizing it. And I just having a mindset like this or a quote like this and a thought about yes, we need to try and change and develop and grow helps beat those mindsets and stop you falling into those traps. So I really, really like it from that perspective.
Yeah, no, good. I think kind of what you're touching on and what I'm trying to get towards is that the quote kind of suggests that to achieve our dreams or our goals or plans for the future, we must be willing to change ourselves in order to get there. um, and that can include, as you say, our habits, our mindsets, our perspectives, our approaches to scenarios, our responses, how we work things out in our minds, how we help other people work things out in their minds and things like that. It all kind of adds up and comes together. And as I say, the topic is um, kind of along the same vein as some of the other things we've been speaking about recently, but I do think we've struck a little bit of gold in terms of kind of the subjects that we're taking at the minute and the
Yeah,
conversations that we're having because they feel really positive and um, kind of what I imagine the podcast should feel like for people that listen to it and things like that. So, a few other thoughts that I had initially was that growth often involves um, escaping comfort zones and things that we place ourselves in. And as you say, Lee, it's or as you said a minute ago, it's not always what it needs to be if you want to keep improving yourself. It can't be, well, I'm like this, I'm this type of person and things like that. So getting out of that comfort zone and accepting that you are different and things do change is obviously massively important. And it also helps us embrace new challenges, even if they're uncomfortable at first, which most of them tend to be around change and things like that. We don't tend to like where they land or where we land, and eventually we work out a way to make it work for us as humans and things like that. We may not, and all the changes we make, we talk about it in a similar tone. All the changes we make may, in some instances, not be for the better, and that's okay as well. We just got to be ready to step back and reevaluate and try again. Really, um, yeah, feels like there's a lot of self-reflection in it. If we're striving to be a better version of ourselves, we must, actively work towards it, as you suggest. It should become a mindset rather than a one stop scenario.
I like what you said about the theme of the podcast as well recently, and I will dive into that a little bit with these kind of type of conversations. So, to put a bit of analogy with how this sits in my head, there's a series of books. I think there's 5 books in the series that I read quite a few years back now, and it's called the Long Earth series, and it's kind
Okay.
of a sci-fi type thing. I would highly recommend them. They're fantastic books. But the principle of it is that there are loads and loads and loads and loads of parallel dimensions, and they all exist all alongside one another. And basically, someone and then other people got the ability where you can step sideways into the next universe. So literally, this point on Earth, right here, right now, step and be at this point right here on Earth, but in the next universe. But
Yeah.
they're all in a line, so you can only go one left or one right. But in theory, you can
Yeah.
go out and out. And eventually, throughout the book, they get to the point where they explore these worlds and they can cross hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands of worlds. And they're all very slightly different, as you'd expect being an alternate universe. But what they
Yeah.
found is when you step back, it kind of grew into themes of worlds. So there was like a group of worlds they called the Corn Belt because the temperature on them was really great for growing corn and it was in abundance. And there's things like that where although they kind of, it's the same I guess as a central finite curve in Rick and Morty, that you can almost follow a pattern by the little changes and they cluster into groups along the way. And it
I've
feels like,
started rewatching that, by the way.
oh, what, Rick and Morty? Yeah, I think I need to
Yeah.
do that as well. I've fallen slightly out of love with it, and I need to get back in love with it again.
I think I stepped away from it for long enough that I think I can binge it all again and then enjoy it for what it is.
Yeah, I might give that a go.
But sorry,
So,
you were saying.
oh, it feels the same with this. We've kind of, from conversationally, we've kind of got this group of similar themed and feeling podcasts, like you said, that are really
Yeah.
positive, talking about change, how you achieve your goals, a really good message. And obviously, something in that has resonated with you, that you've spotted this pattern, but it sounds like you feel quite encouraged and quite energized by us kind of being in this pattern of conversations as well, which obviously must be, something to do with our collective mindset between the three of us and where we are and what, either where we are or where we want to be and what speaks to us.
It does feel like we've come. To me, it feels like we've become a little bit more aligned, which scares me because Joe scares me sometimes. But we feels like we've become a little bit more aligned to not beliefs, but I don't know, just thought processes and where we land, which is obviously part of our own self development and the conversations that we have. And we've said it before that if no one ever listens to these podcasts, that'd be fine. But they're there for us
Yes.
and ideally for other people to benefit from what we go through. There's also a good Family Guy episode on multiverses and things like that as well.
Oh yeah, Road to the
Um,
Multiverse. I think I watched
yeah.
that one the other day. Actually, I like that one.
I remember that being episode one of a season at some point that was um, right when I was in the peak of Family Guy, and it
Oh
was one
yeah,
of the things I was really looking forward to.
and a
Um,
great episode. That's really good thoughts on it. I'll tell you the other bit as well, just quickly. So Max, I know that
yeah.
it's about Max Dupree. I'd never heard of him from this end, but I like seeing what he does in business culture and stuff like that. I really like him. But in the world of wrestling, as you quite aptly pointed out, there's a current wrestler by the name of LA Knight, who you might have even heard of because he's the current United States champion and he beat one Logan Paul to win that title a little while ago.
Oh, okay.
Um, but he had a character called LA Knight. They brought him up to the main roster and they changed his
Yeah.
name. And they kind of a gimmick where he was going to be a manager. And as a team, it was him and his sister, I think, were like this management team. And they called them Max and Maxine Dupree. Spelt differently than this Dupree, but I bet that's where they got the name from. And then that didn't catch on. Then he changed and he went back to his LA Knight gimmick and he's on fire and he's brilliant. But the character who was his sister, who's his sister in real life, is still going by that name of Maxine Dupree. So there is currently still a Max Dupree active wrestling in WWE right now as well. There you go. There's
Well,
anytime I can
I
get a
just,
wrestling tie in, I feel happy.
that's it. Yeah, I just bring content for everyone.
And
That's what I try
if
to.
you Google a good Wikipedia article about the Max Dupree you're referring to comes up, but a load of YouTube videos of the wrestling Max Dupree also come up as well. So it's a good mix. Speaking of which, the better thing to stick into Google is Jose Noya-Inspiration Nation. Sign up on YouTube and on Twitter or X or whatever it's called these days. There's TikTok he likes as well. He's on there as well. But if you follow and you subscribe, you will find out when we go live each and every week. We're there on YouTube right now. We would be on TikTok, but Jose's off doing whatever mystery thing he's doing. We'll find out more about that next week. But that's how you can get involved live with the show each and every week, what we're doing. Of course, check us out as well, inspirationnation.org.uk. And we are on X at listen2in, listen T-O-I-N. It's a bit of plug-in and a bit of shilling going on mid-show. So, sorry, I think before I got on a Max Dupree, there was some other wisdom you were going to give us assigned to that quote.
I lost exactly what I was going to say.
Oh, no, I killed it with
that's okay.
my useless trivia.
No, that's okay. So, just to kind of remind people, the quote was, "We cannot become what we want by remaining what we are." Which essentially just says that if we want to get better, then we're going to have to change who we are and what we are and things like that. So, I think again we spoke about it on the subjects of podcasts over the last few weeks and months, things like that. But it kind of the quote to me is important because it drives three kind of um, sub sub messages. I don't want to say subliminal messages because that's wrong, but some three further messages alongside it, and I think it definitely encourages self-awareness. The quote prompts us to reflect on where we are versus where we want to be, as we know.
Yeah.
It encourages us to take a look at our habits and our thoughts and our actions that may well be holding us back. And I think the biggest amount of change, or the biggest biggest amount, or the biggest point of change, or the biggest pivot of change, only comes if we're truly honest about um, what we could be better at, or what we want to improve in ourselves, and what we need to change and how we need to change it. Quite often, as we know, the first step in a lot of this stuff is the hardest and biggest step with it. So, um, the second sub message I had, or sub thought process I had, was it emphasizes growth over comfort. As you say, it's very easy to, or you said earlier, it's very easy to get caught in a comfort zone and say,
Absolutely,
this is
yeah.
who I am, how I am, you have to take me as I am, and all this other stuff. But it emphasizes that growth as a person and as in relationships, work relationships, friends, family, partners, whatever, it kind of emphasizes that growth will always outweigh comfort, even though comfort is easy and warm and snuggly and what we're all used to. Um, Many people stay in familiar routines, as we know, even if they're unsatisfying, um, because as we say, comfort is always
That's
easier
it.
than change. Um, and the quote challenges us to step out of our comfort zones to realize our potential. Um, Sounds like another motivational quote as it is, reminding us that growth rarely happens without discomfort. We have to go through the curve. There is a curve model that Joe would be screaming at me, I think, if he was here. And I
Probably
don't want to
throwing a book
misquote.
at the screen as well at the same time.
I'm going to Google what I think it is. Is this the change curve? Oh no, I'm going about group development. So no, I'm on about something else. There is a change curve, and you know, there's always there's the 7 steps of acceptance and things like that as well, isn't there? And I think all of this stuff kind of ties in together. I was thinking of forming, storming, norming, and
Oh, I
performing,
love
but
a bit of that.
that's a team. Uh, that's a very much a uh, work related quote for those of us that work in scenarios like that. Um, and the other third important stance or important message that goes with it is that it inspires action. It reminds you that you've got to, you know, if you want to be better or you want to make a change in your life or you want to be better for family, friends, kids, partners, whatever, yourself more so than anything else, then it reminds you that having goals is great, but you cannot sit on your laurels about them and you've really got to go after them if you want to achieve them. And that's pretty much all I had on the quote this week. I don't know if any of that strikes any thoughts through you.
That's a lot of content there where you say that's all I've got. I think that's some really good stuff there. But as you said, it's the one part of this is that, okay, I need to change. It's okay to change. Don't fall into the traps of the comfort zone. But change is scary. That's why we
Yeah,
resist it as humans. Small, big, done to us when we're in control of it. And one thing is, if it's done to you, it can be hard. And you go through that cycle like you talked about with change. But ultimately, it's going to happen because an external force is making it happen, whatever that is.
yeah,
When you're acknowledging the need to change, even when you're comfortable with it, you're the one who's then got to make it happen. You've got to drive that. You've got to make the steps. You've got to push yourself when you go through the hard bits when it feels really difficult. And that is a big concept and it is scary. And, you know, we are programmed to push against that. And it's hopefully through a number of the topics we've talked about in this, there's a lot of good stuff there to help people with it. But I guess it's that reassurance to people that it's okay. It will feel uncomfortable. Will feel tough. In fact, when it feels uncomfortable, that's when you're in the right place. That's when you're doing the good work. But that change will become familiar. You get to a new level of comfort. You reset where your bar is. And then
yeah,
you begin the cycle all over again. And actually, rather than view it, oh, I've got to change, I've got to change, I've got to change, you're back to comfort. You're back to comfort, but you're aiming to a good place. You're aiming for that comfortable thing, and then it's up
yeah,
to you. I've got here. Do I want to push on? Do I not? But you know, you can give yourself that control and feel more relaxed and feel more reassured about it. But yeah, it's tough because a lot of the time no one's going to do it for you, and you've got to be brave and you've got to make that step. And we wholly, you know, it's something we try and do ourselves. We talk openly about how that goes on here, and we want to encourage people to do the same thing. And if you're not sure, reach out to us. I gave all the socials earlier. Reach out to Jose, reach out to us. If you want us to talk about stuff, soundboards, Joe does coaching. It's what he does. He loves to help people. So we're always there if people want to engage and talk about what those challenges are as well.
yeah. Whilst you were talking, I found the change curve that I
Oh,
was originally meant to find.
go
Uh,
on then.
and depending on what source you have, there's either 4, 5, 7, 8, or 15 steps of change. But I understand the Kubler-Ross change curve as being a 7-step change, and that's when I learned about change.
Yeah,
Things like that. It's a 7-step process, and um, we could probably do a whole podcast episode on things like this. But most people would have heard of things like the change curve and things like that, but maybe not remember exactly what it is. But usually the first step is shock. You change happens whether you force it upon yourself or it's forced upon you, and there's a shock to either your system, um, both metaphorically and maybe sometimes physically. Then you reach the denial phase where you kind of say, the change isn't going to work, or I don't want it, I don't like it can never be for me. And then you get to the anger phase where you then aren't happy that things are changing, and generally you're not happy in the first place, but you are angry that the change is happening and that um, it's happening to you because you like living in your quiet, comfy, warm comfort zone. You then reach depression. This is the lowest point of the whole change curve, where it's like, why is it me? I hate this. Wouldn't happen to anybody else like this. And then eventually you'll reach a stage called experimentation, where you will want to try and see if it can work, or can I move this part of it around to mean that this works for me and I can make it happen. And then you reach something called decision, where you actually have moved things around and you've settled into the change and you're saying, well, maybe this actually could work. I may not like it, but it could work. And then you reach a stage called integration, which is where you're pretty much out the other end and it kind of starts to say, let's do this. I've made the changes happen. I can't do anything about it now, or I'm happy that it's happened. Um, the decision is what it is. It's been done. And what can I now do to survive as a result? And to me, that's how I understand the 7 steps of change.
Yeah, and it's good. Like you said, if you Google it, you can find a lot of stuff on that, and it's good to be aware of it because you almost can't fight it. They are the steps you go through as people. It's how our brains are wired. It's what we do, and if you're comfortable with that, if you can be conscious of moving through those stages and knowing what comes next, it makes it easier to get through it because there's a big chance, especially when you're the one driving the change, of throwing in the towel at those early stages. But it's natural. It's what happens, and a bit of reading, a bit of reassurance, a bit of reflection, I can really think help people move through to those next steps rather than getting stuck in it.
Yeah.
I say when it's being done to you, you're almost forced through those steps. But we're talking here about real self-motivated change, and that's where you need to drive that and almost become your own coach at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
It's a good quote, Grista. I like it. I now know there's 2 Max Duprees as well, so I've learned even more so. And like you said, it's just we have cottoned on to this little run of shows on this theme, and I think we'll keep this going for a little while. What I'm doing, like you said, it might not, and it might be a few shows. I think we can really deep dive into that change cycle. Maybe that's something that will really help people, and something we can suggest.
Yeah,
with
it will
our
happen.
Absent third member of the trio.
Yeah, one of the things about the change curve is that it will happen to you even when you're not knowing that it's happening to you. Like it'll be the smallest inconsequential change to work or life, but you will still go through those 7 steps at some point. And it may not always be in the order in which I spoke about it, but generally speaking, it will be. I don't know. Your kids decide they now want to do after school club until 4 o'clock, and that then means you have to change your routine to go and pick them up, or um, I don't know, you decide you need to move house, or all sorts of things can happen that you think that they're quite actually bigger changes. But I think
I've not quite
you
got
get what I
over
mean.
the last move yet, so that's traumatic
You,
for me. That is.
you know what I mean? Like the small micro changes, you may not go through all 7 steps, but you will go through that
Yeah,
process of
absolutely.
why has it happened? That's annoying. Can I get over it? And then you move out the other side. Um, and depending on the scenario or the type of experience you have with change or how big of a change it is of an impact to you will often determine how quick you go through that change curve as it is as well.
Yes.
Anyway, um, I'm not usually the one that pushes on to takeaways when you're here. Usually, I take the back seat.
Okay. What am I going to say? And it's definitely in the change bit as well. That's what stuck with me from this one is, sometimes you have to do the work. Sometimes you've got to make that hard step. I said it earlier, be your own coach. That's my takeaway. That is my takeaway. Grifster, how about you?
The beauty of bringing the quote is that I've already got a takeaway for it.
Pre-prepared.
And that is you need to embrace the opportunities for learning. I think a lot of the time, the going through change or improving yourself, if you drive it, it's a much easier process. But I think everyone can agree that when somebody thrusts change upon you, it can be disenfranchising, upsetting, frustrating. And I think embracing the opportunity of change that you don't control, but other people control for you, is actually where you can learn and improve yourself more than you think you can.
I like it. I like it a lot. Everyone, thank you for supporting us. If you like what you're doing, again, just reach out to us at Listen to Ian, Listen TOIN on X is probably easiest, and just search Jose Noya-Inspiration Nation on your Google machine. He is all over the place. We will be back again next week. There might be 2 of us, we might be 3 of us. We're a bit all over the show right now, but we'll see what happens. All that's left for me to do is count us down. I'll say 3, 2, 1. Inspiration Nation.
Inspiration Nation.
Catch you guys
Catch
later.
you guys later.
Oh wait, Joe's not here. Later. There we go. We're off.